Hey everyone. So today I wanted to talk about an understanding that has been told to me many, many, many times, and I'm only just now coming around to understanding what to actually do with. Um, so, in the hopes that anyone who, like me, has struggled with embodying this understanding before, hopefully I can start explaining it in a way that will make it a little bit more resonant. And that is this. When people tell you to look for your happiness within, or, find that in yourself, um, what that actually means and how you do it. So in my own life, one of the major ways this has come up is in relationships. Um, I think many of us, especially those of us who grew up, socialized as women in this culture, this whole idea of like, truly, you'll never be happy until you find the one, and you like lock him down. And it's always a him. You lock him down forever and ever and ever, and it's that's love everlasting till death do us part. That is the purpose of your life, and that is where you'll find your safety and your happiness. Um, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who has ended up in tons of pain from trying to do that, and that no matter how many times I tell myself that's total bullshit, I can't actually get myself to believe it or believe that my source of happiness can fully be within. Of course, this is not specific to relationships of any kind, romantic, platonic, familial, whatever. A lot of people find this with their jobs, with their career path, with their identity in any way. This idea that the source of their stability can be found in something other than themselves. When I say stability, I don't necessarily just mean, survival stability, but, emotional stability, emotional groundedness, a sense of identity that is stable, a stable sense of self, that a lot of us look for that stability externally. And I think one of the things that this past year with COVID and all of the changes that have happened to our lives has shown us was that kind of identity is fundamentally unstable. That if you are identifying who you are by your job, your friend group, where you live, what you do every day, who you're dating, that identity is never stable forever. And personally, recently, just in trying to figure out the future, kind of post-COVID, what I'm going to do, I found myself really stressed out with the thought, I want something I can safely attach to, as in ground myself in, feel, depend on, and expect that I can depend on safely. So what I mean when I say that is, I want something in my life that lasts forever, and that I can depend on to last forever. So some of us do this with, where we live, with our jobs, with our partners. We want this external thing that will last forever so that we can feel safe, because we don't feel like we can feel happy when we're afraid. So I think anyone who's experienced kind of abandonment traumas of any kind, you've probably had an experience of you just can't trust that this is going to last, whatever it is, because I know for me it hasn't just been romantic relationships, it's been like housing situations and relying on other people for my place of living. Or, relying on this job to work out and last forever. And it just doesn't. That the realm of form, the realm of conceptual, nouns that can be thought of conceptually. I've got to find a better way of explaining form. But what I mean when I say form is anything that has a form in conceptual reality. So people, places, events, actions, concretized ideas. The realm of form fluctuates. That is what it does. It changes, it grows, expands, decays, dies, goes away, changes form. And so any conceptual identity is always going to crumble, or at the very least change. And what I think a lot of us are coming to understand is that we have to find some other source of our identity, our rootedness, our groundedness, our emotional safety that isn't any of these external things. And if you're anything like me, you've like known that conceptually, but you've had no idea what to do with it. When anyone tells you like you have to find that safety within yourself, you're like, how exactly do I do that? Because it seems, it's all well and good for you to say that, but the reality is that I'm terrified all the time. And I think the first thing to understand is that your terror makes perfect sense. Trying to pin your safety on an external reality that is fundamentally fluctuating and impermanent and malleable is terrifying because it literally can't be done. Like, you can't find eternal and lasting safety in a world that's constantly changing. Hilariously, and this is a conversation for probably another video, but it's so funny to me seeing the slogan "Make America Great Again," which is like essentially a way of saying make the world go back to something where things seem more stable than they do now, because it's a recognizable, past that used to make me feel safe. And it's kind of interesting that like it feels like we're standing on water right now. With, our institutions and our society and our roles within that society, our identities within that society kind of being thrown up into the air, where these expectations that we used to have about what things meant are crumbling, and we're realizing that like that's not who we are, that we weren't that job, we weren't that experience, and that who we actually are is much more subtle and complex and nuanced than that. And so of course you see the reaction back to, I want solid ground under me again. Because for many people, the reality that the realm of form is impermanent and fluctuating and can't be attached to safely, that didn't seem real for a long time. That many people for years and years and years had one stable partner, one stable role they played in their community, one stable job they worked at for 30 years, one house they lived in for all of their life, never left their hometown. There was sort of an ordered procession of events to life that had a kind of universal pattern that they could follow, and it felt safe, and there was a predictability to it. And the reality is that that's a fluke. The fact that people experienced the world as so predictable and linear and stagnant and kind of permanent, that can happen sometimes, but it is a fluke. You may have a job that lasts the rest of your life. You may have a partner that you're with and pretty much the same role for the rest of your life. But even then, there will be changes within it. So stepping into the understanding that the realm of form is fundamentally impermanent and fluctuating is where you start from. And then you're left with the knowledge that if that's not where you can find your sense of safety, there must be somewhere else, because living a life of complete terror all the time just doesn't really feel that good. So, what it is that you can actually attach to safely that is permanent, fixed, and unchanging, the more you practice it, the realer it gets, is the knowledge that you need not ever sacrifice your happiness. When people tell you to find your source of happiness within, what they kind of mean is find your sense of safety and security and certainty that you will be happy within. And what that looks like might not be entirely internal. What I mean is, when you are talking about creating the knowledge that you need not ever sacrifice your happiness, what that actually looks like in your life may appear to be both about following your bliss, or moving in the direction of the things make you happy, and moving away from things make you unhappy. And it can also look like changing your perspective on situations so that they stop being sources of pain and start being sources of happiness. So essentially, what it means to say the knowledge that I need not ever sacrifice my own happiness is another way of saying I commit to my own happiness above everything else. And that can look like no matter what happens, I'm going to go do the things that make me happy. Or it can look like no matter what happens, I'm going to find a way to be happy about it. So, for example, it can be walking away from a relationship that makes you unhappy, even though you feel bad doing it. You feel guilty or so doing it. And trusting that your happiness is never something to feel guilty about. It can also look like if someone leaves you, saying, well, I choose my happiness over my longing for that relationship. Meaning I'm not going to let the lack of that relationship be a source of suffering in my life. I'm going to find happiness beyond that thing. What many of us have a tendency to do when we are not finding our happiness within is to equate our happiness with the external source that we think is giving it to us. And therefore, when that, and I don't say if, I say when, that external condition changes, which it will, we let that change our happiness. And we actually don't have to. And the process of that might sound one of those, like, I have no idea how to start. For years I was just like, what do you even mean? Like, I can just be happy when bad things happen. You actually can. It's not always easy. It's actually usually very difficult, but it is possible. And a lot of times, well, always, I would say, yeah, always, you're having thoughts about the situation that are what's causing you to feel unhappy. And you can choose different thoughts. Sometimes it will be so difficult to choose different thoughts that it feels impossible. That's okay. Sometimes you can take actions to change your circumstances. Sometimes the actions you can take are to change your thoughts, and that's it. So quite literally, I can be like, this Burt's Bees chapstick is bad. And I can look at it and be angry. And then I can literally just look at it and say, actually, it's good. That's a really trite example, but it literally is that simple. That you start looking at a situation in your life, let's say, someone left you, and saying, what if that isn't bad? Then what? And a lot of times you might have trouble believing that it could be good for, very good reasons. And your sadness is perfectly valid. It makes perfect sense. However, you also have the ability to choose a perspective on it that doesn't make you miserable. And a lot of that has to do with changing your beliefs. And that will probably be the topic of my next video. But for now, I want to leave you with this, that if you find that attaching to the world around you, trying to find your sense of identity, safety, security, lasting happiness, trust in your happiness, if you are trying to find that through a job, through a partnership, through a house, through an achievement, whatever it is, and you keep finding that that's not working for you, and that fluctuation there and impermanence there isn't making you happy, the first step is to understand that you don't need that thing in order to be happy. You just need happiness. And from there, you can start opening yourself up to many other pathways to get to it. Thanks.